comfortably that's not true and most people would be entitled to early. But with me sending up ABS 5, they can actually take that function that we're going to override it, so that's fine. That's fairly immediate need for the changing over to an in-person vote. You cannot technically reject a ballot until election day. So instead, what I'm going to do is at 6 a.m. I'm going to give you a list of these.
Are we still waiting on the other?
Reject all those at 6 a.m. Stick around it.
Ginger, are we still waiting on the?
I think we're all set.
Okay, we're ready to go with the Lake County Board of Elections and voter registration. Approximately 20 minutes late. Alexa, what time is that? Alexa, what time is that? Okay, we're approximately 20 minutes late. Both of my devices are on video now, so it's difficult to find out exactly what time it is. Let me look on the computer. It's 10:19 a.m. Looks like they may finally get started. I did another short video with some of the
We do have Mr. Mellon, Mr.
mess
Tribble,
that
we have
is
Mr. Reed, Mr.
these
Colbert.
are the people that decide our elections. Keep that in mind. The only thing that outweighs their incompetence is their corruption.
Yeah, so far it's looking good. It's actually looking better than ballot. Are we on?
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm going to call the Lake County Board of Elections and Registration Board meeting to order. Today, May 12th. It is 10:20 a.m. And if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which is somewhere we'll face to the. So, all right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for attending via Zoom. And we're here in person. I'm here with Jorge Redondo, and Michelle Fayman, and Leanne Angerman. Roll call, please, Leanne.
Dana Dumasic. Here. Lorenzo Arredondo.
Here.
Bob Tribble.
Here.
Mike Mellon.
Present.
Kevin Smith.
I'm present. We have a quorum. All members are present either in person or via Zoom. I would note that this meeting has been properly noticed electronically pursuant to the governor's executive orders, and we are participating both in person and by Zoom. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes for April 24th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. A motion by Ms. Dumasic, seconded by Clerk Arredondo to approve the minutes of April 24th, 2020. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Dana Dumasic. Here. Lorenzo Arredondo.
Yes.
Mike Mellon.
Yes.
Bob Tribble.
Yes.
Kevin Smith.
Yes, that motion carries. And just for the record, the reason I'm doing roll call is that's the requirement under the executive order. I do not see any old business. Is there any old business? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. New business. The first is an election complaint, which is entitled 2020-03, Tomsci, T-O-M-S-C-I. All board members have been presented with this. It's a complaint filed by Jane L. Tomsci regarding a absentee ballot application. I believe Mr. Colbert or Mr. Reed, would you like to report to the board where we are on this?
Yeah, I can give a brief report, Chairman Smith. I've overviewed this complaint, and I've actually called Mr. Josh Owens, I believe is his name. I've called him twice. I haven't been able to get a hold of him. It looks like a valid number that I have for him that I got off the application because it's his cell phone. And so I imagine that it's just a matter of time before he calls me back. So my recommendation would be that we defer this matter to give me a chance to at least talk to him and to get more information about this complaint.
Mr. Reed, anything additional?
I just to make a quick point, my understanding is when staff spoke to this voter, they had no idea who this individual was who signed this ballot request. And if Mr. Tolbert wants to take a closer look at it, I understand that I think this person might have even at one time been a candidate for, I think maybe the governor's office. But if what we're seeing so far is true, I know we're on a short time clock. I might just recommend going ahead and referring it to the prosecutor now. It sounds, just from what we know, it sounds pretty devious.
Yeah, the one thing I would say just in response to that, Mr. Reed, is that I'm happy to report this is the only one we've got in. I know in the past we've been inundated with sometimes some questionable voter registration, voter applications. To my knowledge, it's the only one we've received, which is good news. Yes, I guess we'll wait for Mr. Tolbert. I think we have a meeting. When's our next meeting? The 19th?
Yes.
So, Mr. Tolbert, could you please report back to us by then so we can decide what to do with this on that date?
I can.
All right. Given that, any other questions of Mr. Reed or Mr. Tolbert?
Wait, Mr. Smith, I'm sorry. Can I jump in?
Mr. Mellon?
I'm trying to sort through the recommendations of the attorneys. Mr. Tolbert made a recommendation to defer, and Mr. Reed recommending to refer to the prosecutor. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Shouldn't we vote on that, or are you making that decision?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe some clarification from Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed, I thought you said that. Or let me just ask you clearly. Was your recommendation to refer to the prosecutor at this time?
Yes, I mean, that would be my recommendation. Look, we're all busy. Michael's busy. Everybody's got a lot to do. Certainly the staff is very busy. To turn ourselves into investigators, and I know Michael's very good at it, by the way, he goes and talks to people, and I don't know that that's necessarily what we need to all be spending our time on. If this was a fraudulent request, if it was, the prosecutor should let the state police or their investigators make that decision. I don't know that it's to us to be digging into the mire and these types of issues.
Okay. Well then, is there any other questions of Mr. Reed or Mr. Tolbert? Okay, hearing none, I guess I'll entertain a motion.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to refer to the prosecutors.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to refer this matter to the prosecutor to look into it. We have a motion by Mr. Mellon, a second by Ms. Dumazich. Hearing none, roll call vote.
Dana Dumazich,
Yes.
Lorenzo Arredondo,
No.
Bob Tribble,
No.
Mike Mellon,
Yes.
Kevin Smith.
No. That motion fails 3-2. We'll entertain a motion to defer this matter till the 19th to hear back from Mr. Tolbert. I'll entertain that motion. I so move. We have a motion by Clerk Arredondo. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Tribble. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote.
Dana Dumazich,
Yes.
Lorenzo Arredondo,
Yes.
Bob Tribble,
Yes.
Mike Mellon,
Yes.
Kevin Smith.
Yes, that motion carries. Mr. Tolbert, please make sure we hear back from you on the 19th with full report so that we can determine where to go at that point.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Next matter of new business is campaign finance report. Suspend 10-page limit for 515 report from resolution 2019-15. Michelle or Leanne?
You have a copy of the resolution in the packet. When the resolution was passed, it had a maximum of 10 pages for electronic submission. So with the building still closed to the public, it was to the board if you would like to consider making a motion to suspend the requirement or the maximum limit of 10 pages.
So this would allow someone to either fax or email or just fax more than 10 pages.
Either one. They are both included in the resolution.
All right. I'll entertain a motion then to amend 2019-15 to allow a greater than 10-page limit to be submitted electronically.
Is it an amendment or is it suspension up?
That's a good question. Mr. Tolbert, Mr. Reed, would you like us to amend it or suspend the requirement?
I think just a temporary suspension is all you need to do.
Okay, that sounds, I apologize then. So I'll entertain a motion to suspend that 10-page requirement temporarily to allow the finance reports that are due.
End date.
currently, and this suspension would go to a certain date. Do we know what date we want, Leanne?
I'm just making pre-primary at this time,
Yeah,
pre-primary reporting schedule.
Yeah.
2020 primary report.
All right, for the 2020 pre-primary report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Clerk Arredondo, a second by Ms. Beasley. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mello.
this isn't gonna, I'm asking this questions for the staff, I guess. It's not gonna cause a burden on the staff, working with, odd circumstances, be receiving significantly large, financial statements in to your base.
It will involve some increase in resources. Without
Are we
a
able to
doubt.
handle
Just
that?
with I think our staff is able to handle that at this point in time. For this report only, I would suggest.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Dillon,
I do believe in our email chain, I did see that due to the fact the building is closed, that people can come in the following Monday is it Monday the building opens back up? And turn in person reports.
At this point, the current order states public could make an appointment, but until the commissioners create a new order, this one will expire on the 18th or 17th. But what their new order is going to contain, I do not know.
But public law doesn't it say that if the building is closed, the next business day it's open would be I don't have it in front of me. Wasn't some email report. But the next business day, that county office would be open, or the Indian Election Division, it would be, the due date would be suspended until that date.
That is typically the case for a holiday, although for an extended period of time of a building closure, I would defer that question.
I do believe it said for holidays and if the building was closed.
Michelle, I can't hear you.
I believe when we sent out that email, it specifically stated or if there was a holiday or if the building was closed. So in this case, the building is closed on Friday, report is due. Therefore, the due date goes on Monday. Now, if by chance they close the building on Monday and say they're open on Tuesday, then that deadline date that goes to the next business day that we're open with that be Tuesday.
Well, I think the confusion might come in when it's by appointment only. Because is the building considered, open fully to the public, or is it, I didn't get to make an appointment today, or they were full, so I could see that being a complicating factor. So like, and due date would be different than can I still fax it in or email it.
Thank you.
Okay. So I don't know, Mr. Reed, Mr. Colbert, do you want to weigh in on this issue on?
It's kind of hard for me to hear. You're chopping up.
Yes, everybody in that room is.
Can you repeat?
Yes. Am I still choppy?
What a cluster.
I can hear you now. It's still a little choppy, but I can hear you.
No, I think it's the internet issue.
Mr. Tolbert, is it more clear if I speak being closer to the iPad?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Very clearly.
Yes.
Okay, so to reiterate what President Smith said, the comment was, it still comes into play is that it may not be the deadline, people are still wanting to submit their campaign finance report prior to that deadline, if that deadline would be extended to the following Monday or the commission in the building. In light of all of that, Mr. Smith, I think you had one more point in there.
Yes, Mr. Colbert, Mr. Reed, they want to weigh in on.
And Mr. Tolbert, Mr. Reed, do you have any comment? Would you like to weigh in on that at all?
In terms of the extension, whether it should be extended, I think is the question. I'm
Yes.
trying to make out the question. I think in light of the circumstances, I think it should.
From my perspective, I don't really have an opinion one way or another. I mean, ultimately these things are, it's the burden really, yes, it's on the candidates, but it's really on the staff to go through and deal with these things. And frankly, I think it's really their decision on how they want their workflow to go.
in our opinion, we would like the limit extended for this reporting period and for them to allow 2 packs or email in for the 10 pages. It's not going to put that much of a burden on us for right now to do that.
Shelley, you're still breaking up. I'm really sorry.
Let's just get up and go.
It's just hard with everybody on the screen at once, I think.
In regards to the staff's opinion, our recommendation would be to suspend the rules for the 10-page limit for this reporting period, allowing those to send them in, and that the reporting due date would be when the building opens up again. So it's the next business day that the building is open would be the date that the report would be due at noon.
Yeah, I mean, I think the due date issue is separate from the suspension of the 10-page rule is.
Correct. So there was a motion on the floor for the suspension of the rule. Right. Yep. So at this point in time, maybe make a vote on that.
Is there any other questions of staff or any other discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Dana Dumasich,
Yes.
Lorenzo Arredondo,
Yes.
Bob Tribble,
Yes.
Mike Mellon,
Yes.
Kevin Smith.
Yes, that motion carries 5-0. We've been asked to give the mechanics permission to start the public test. Could someone make that motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Dana Dumasich,
Yes.
Lorenzo Arredondo,
Yes.
Bob Tribble,
Yes.
Mike Mellon,
Yes.
Kevin Smith.
Yes, that motion carries. The mechanics are given permission to start. For those people that are watching on Zoom, there should be a video that says, I think it says mechanics bird's eye or something like
Vote
that.
mechanic public test.
Okay, mechanic public test is what it says. All right. I guess the next order of business is the public test. We've given them permission to start, so at this point, are we gonna just let them proceed, or we're gonna head over there?
So they will start. So we currently own approximately 1,300 voting machines, 50 of which are used for early voting, 50 of which are used on standby, which leaves us a remaining of 1,250. With the 1,250, 5% of that, I believe, would be 62.5. We will be testing 66 machines today, so over the 5%. We will also be testing a test deck of ballot cards for random precincts, allowing for each candidate to have at least one vote on there. We will also test to ensure that the system does not allow for an overvote. So they will test those, and then if the board members wish to also test the machine, they are also welcome to do those.
All right, so as the mechanics are getting ready to do that, can we proceed with other business? I'd like to talk about the travel board and the no-week issue. Okay, so they're preparing for everyone on the Zoom. You can actually see what they're doing over there on that video caption. But in the meantime, is there any other new business?
I believe they are.
Can we get the mechanic out there so you're back on my screen? Now I can see as the mechanic. I can't even see the group in the office anymore on the main screen. See you up top.
Hey, Bernadette?
That's at the top of your screen if you click gallery view.
Huh?
So I get a good angle.
Yes. Then what?
If you click gallery view, you should see everyone again.
Okay, we'll see how that works.
I think that's in the
All
mechanic.
right, or otherwise, Ginger, you could also spotlight us if you want.
That'd be good. But I can see everybody in squares. Oh.
Can we mute them?
There we go.
They've got them muted.
You're good.
All right.
Thank you.
The next order, is there any other new business? I believe we have some regarding the travel board.
Yes. So the staff is, or I am requesting a discussion in regard to individuals who have filled out a request for a travel board and now may want to change it into mail. Majority of our nursing homes have already changed theirs into a mail request so that individuals are not coming into the nursing homes. We still have a number of individual homes that we need to go to. Staff is in the process of contacting these voters to find out, do they still want us to come out there and enter into their home? So the question became, can we change over a request from a travel board application to a mail application? Keep in mind, in the past, it used to be what I call one-stop shopping on the application, where voters would be able to fill out, did you want to buy mail, in person, or travel board? A few years ago, they changed them to have 3 separate applications, one for in person, one for mail, and one for travel board. But at this late point in time, and with voters being confined to their home and having access to stuff, the reason for voting by either travel board or mail was that they're confined or caring for a confined voter, and so it does apply to both. And actually, in this time of the pandemic, the state has suspended the rules for even having a reason for voting by mail. So our request would be is if we could transfer over via verbal a request from a voter saying, I previously wanted travel board, but due to the pandemic, I do not want someone coming in my house and would prefer to change it to mail without making you a new application. And we could provide a list after the fact of anyone who has requested that.
I did contact the state election division on that question specifically, and they advised no, that the voter would need to reapply.
I had also sent out some to the board members where I believe that there might have been a difference of opinion from the Democratic side. Mr. Tolbert, I believe you had received it. I believe all board members had received that I sent out.
That's correct.
There could be a difference of opinion.
That's correct. Can I chime in just briefly?
Yeah, Mr. Tolbert.
All right. Yeah, there was a difference in opinion because this is really uncharted territory in which we're in because of this pandemic. So everyone is kind of moving in the wilderness and trying to do the best we can. But I guess the other option or the other opinion was that this could be done because of the scenario that we're in, and people are allowing, because of the pandemic, to vote by mail by way of absentee ballot anyway. And the historical, I guess, background that Michelle gave was really a good one, and I talked to her about that a little bit. If you look at the code, it used to be all one. It used to be all one application. Now it's split. And if you look at Indiana Code 311-1025, the section that deals with travel board applications, it really talks about you being able to vote either by travel board if you can show the requirements that are met via travel board, or by mail. So the way I kind of look at this is there's really, under the circumstance with the pandemic that we're in, you have either the option to either go by travel board and go through the formalities of the travel board application, or you can actually go by mail. And I think that's Indiana Code 311-1025, section that's section A of the code. So I think that we have to be, as a board, be a little bit flexible and nimble, and kind of carry out the intent of these rules, which is to allow folks to be allowed to vote, particularly people that are in situations where they can't really get out to vote because of an illness or because they're in a nursing home. And also at the same time, balance the safety factor of having our people go by way of travel board and expose themselves to an illness. So that kind of would be my kind of take on this. I think we can do it, and I think it's probably the prudent thing to do under the circumstance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tolbert. Mr. Reed, do you have anything to add?
Well, I guess what I have to add is I guess I would prefer, because what the state party has told us or the state election board has told us is that clearly that we can't do it that way, but I don't see anything wrong with notifying folks who have requested travel board to come to them, and that if they decide that that's not the right option for them, then to provide them with the materials to obtain the absentee ballot, rather than just default send it to them. I think it's one more step, but I think it keeps us in the clear. And I agree with Mr. Tolbert on a logistical, perfect common sense logic that yes, of course we want to, everybody who's expressed an interest and wants to vote, it should be as easy as possible for them to have that opportunity, as long as it's 100% in conformance with code and its interpretation. So I guess, that's what we're left with is, do we just automatically send them out to folks who maybe didn't necessarily request them? Or do we go through that extra step to conform exactly with what the statute says?
So, Mr. Reed, my understanding of Ms. Feynman's explanation was that they were contacting the voter, and if they requested to vote absentee, that's when they would send out the ballot. It wasn't going to go automatically. Ms. Feynman, is that correct?
That is correct. We only go out to those that apply.
Well, no, that apply, and that, in other words, when you contact them, they can say, I still want travel board. Is that accurate? Or are you saying automatically they will now be converted to mail?
No, we would call them and ask them, do you want us to still come out with the travel board? And our question is, we're just not starting to make those phone calls. So in the event they sit there and say, no, I'd rather you not come out, can I have a mail instead? Then we would convert it over to mail without, otherwise what we need to do is we need to send them out another form, mail it, snail mail, because most of these individuals probably do not have internet or fax machines at their home. Snail mail it to them, and then they would send it back to us. And so we could be looking at 14 days just to get some of this mail back.
I have a question. How many are we talking about?
I think,
Are we talking like 200?
no, I don't. We would normally have about 200, but a lot of those nursing homes have it converted down.
So we're talking about a very small amount, but you probably could call in the next 2 days. And the absentee requests don't close until the 21st, correct?
For mail, it closed on the 21st.
From the application.
Yes.
So why wouldn't you call it one of those travel boards up in the next couple of days? I mean, revert some energy to that and have them do it the proper way and fill out a new application. I mean, if we were coming right up to the very end and it was like 2 days before the 21st, maybe we would entertain something like that. But we have plenty of time now.
It's getting closer and closer in time.
It is.
So as we were discussing, as we're making these phone calls, it would be easier per se if we had this now, and then we could just automatically convert it over. If you choose not to, then we will go the other route. It was just a matter of trying to make it as easy as convenient for these individuals who are clearly confined or caring for a confined voter, to make it a little bit easier on them, as well as not the time staff of sending something out new to them.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, was that Mr.
That was Mr.
Tolbert?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. It was my understanding that folks were initiating the call as well. Some folks were calling and asking that travel board be converted to. They wanted to just mail in. Was my understanding as well.
Okay, so the issue is that the travel board is a different form than the ABS by mail.
That's right.
Right, that's our first issue.
That's correct.
So the question is, would somebody calling, would that allow for an ABS by mail? That's what Michelle is suggesting. Someone calls up we convert the travel board application to an ABS by mail. That's the suggestion, right? So.
That's
Whether
right.
they call us or we call them.
Right, well, okay. Versus contacting them, if they say, yes, I want to convert it, we send out a new form, or they apply online if they have internet capability. And if it doesn't come back in time, we can still send out the travel board, correct?
Yes.
We're just concerned about putting our staff at risk or potential voters at risk if someone of the travel board would be positive and would, be out there as well.
Correct.
That's correct.
Now, by all means, this could wait to the 19th board meeting and have this as a discussion. In the meantime, we can try to make some more phone calls, find out how many of this may affect, of who would want them. In the meantime, we can send that out, but also by the 19th, we'll be able to come back and maybe if we haven't gotten that at that point in time, you could just do an overall order that says, hey, these that requested it, transfer over if we haven't got their applications at that point in time.
Mr. Mellon.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm kind of nervous about this notion. In all honesty, we're talking about kind of a lack of dual control, and I recognize that what you're saying is, from what I understand, the attorneys on the state election board disagree on this issue. We normally follow the recommendations or the advice of the state's attorneys, the state election board attorneys, but in this situation, the Democratic attorney and the Republican attorney have a disagreement on the issue. Is that correct, what I'm hearing?
That's true.
Yes.
Okay. Is it possible that we could get their opinions in writing and exactly how they would recommend that we would handle it? Because, the travel boards have a dual control system built into them. What you're talking about doing is taking a dual control system away, and at the same time, without documentation as to the request. We're just saying that somebody can call in, or I can say that I spoke to somebody, and they want an absentee ballot instead of the travel board, and there's no documentation to support that on the back end. It kind of makes me nervous moving forward that we don't have the proper procedures in place, that we're not at least showing that we're going to be doing a system like we're going to have one Republican and one Democrat on each call, and they have to verify and fill out some type of form internally so that we verify that request is taken, so that if that person says, hey, the election board or the travel board never showed up to my house, we can say, well, on this date, you verbally made that request. So lack of procedure and lack of clear guidance from the state board, I think it'd be hard to make a change this significant at this time for me.
So the way I look at it, Mike, and I think those are good points. I think the good thing for us is that we have a valid travel board application. The question is, if we either determine to do it by phone now or send it out, we'd have to invalidate the travel board application, we'd have to receive back a valid ABS by mail application to convert it. So I'm hoping, depending on how we go forward today, that regardless of whether we get an ABS by mail back, the people that have requested to vote by travel board will still be able to do that. So I think, at least for me, we would lessen the risk of these people not being able to vote. We would just have to decide as a board whether or not we're going to, or how and if we're going to convert it over to an ABS by mail. And I'm not so sure that, just doing it on a verbal is the right way to do it either. But we don't know the number, right, Michelle? We don't know how many. Are we saying, when someone asked, is there 200, do you think there's more or less? Less. Okay.
Is it on your?
I thought it was
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mellon.
When somebody has filled out an application or requested a travel board, I know that that's their intent. I'm going to have no documentation to indicate that they've changed their intent. I'm just going to have, somebody saying, I received a verbal confirmation of that. I also know that these people are requesting travel boards because they have difficulty voting. I don't know if they're capable of voting via the absentee ballot situation, And I know how complex that form can be. I know how many get thrown out on election day because of errors and all that. So I worry that I'm going to be disenfranchising these voters because I'm going to be sending them a system they're not familiar with. If they take the time to fill out the form and then sign the documentation as to whether or not somebody helped them with that, then I know that there's a potential that that absentee ballot could come back accurate. Now, what's going to happen when the person turns in their absentee ballot and we don't have the corresponding documentation on the application to show that they had help or assistance with that absentee ballot? But now on the ballot, now on the actual election ballot, they did have help. How do we do that verification? I mean, I think it's going to be very difficult to. And then if that's the case, then is it fair to not do the verification on the request versus the application on these people and not do that and then do that on everyone else? Without procedure, I don't know how you could make a significant change like this. I mean, shouldn't we have some type of procedure that we could vote on, or we're just going to say, yep, do it?
Thank you, Mr. Mellon. Clerk Arredondo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As been suggested, I think, by Mr. Mellon, could we defer the discussion and decision on this matter to the meeting of the 19th? And as been suggested, because our concern, express it to the state, you disagree on how to proceed. Can we get something in writing to perhaps help us and guide us as how we should proceed going forward?
I would certainly support that, Judge Arredondo.
I so move.
All right. We have a motion to defer to the 19th. Is there, okay. Well, we have a motion to defer to the 19th to get a written opinion from both attorneys of the Election Commission on this issue. Is that the motion, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, as to how should we proceed.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Help us to say, how do you do the right thing going forward?
I have a second by Mr. Mellon, motion by the clerk. Is there any discussion? The only thing I would mention is that the 19th, we're not going to have much time to, if we decide to do the forms, we're not going to have much time at all, right? So the 21st is the deadline for an ABS by mail.
Correct. So what we'll do in the meantime is I will get a list right now, find out how many phone calls they've made, see if any of those people were wanting to change. If some of those were wanting to change, we'll go ahead and get an application in the mail to them right now, just to start the process. So that way, if in fact you sat there and were to make the ruling that said, hey, we want the form, that'll at least already be en route. If someone says, no, it's too confusing and I don't want to have the form, I don't want to vote travel board, we'll continue to go travel board. So by the 19th, we'll be able to, one, hopefully have an opinion, and two, have a better number for you.
Yeah, because I did look on the last statistics on the absentee voting, and it's right now it's showing 0, but I don't.
Are you looking at
travel board? That would be requests.
it would not be on the one that comes out from my Excel spreadsheet, which listed the 08 because of when we're tracking the mails right now. You need to be looking at the one that we've sent you maybe a week ago with the state stats that came right from the system. Took you to like a longer page. That's where it would be at. I'm not tracking those yet on my old one.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote on Clerk Arredondo's motion to defer to the 19th, requesting an opinion.
Jana Jumacich,
Yes.
Lorenzo Arredondo,
Yeah.
Bob Tribble,
Yes.
Mike Mellon,
Yes.
Kevin Smith.
Yes, that motion carries. Is there any other new business?
Will the attorneys be sending that letter to them? I had previously had an opinion from the state for the Democratic side. Leanne, did you already have one for the Republican?
Mine was verbal.
Verbal, so maybe the attorneys then could do the follow-up.
Yes, sure. All right, any other new business? Hearing none. Correspondence? None. Council report, Mr. Tolbert or Mr. Reed regarding the no ink change request for the hazard pay.
I did speak with our contact at No Ink yesterday and sent him a follow-up email as well on the conversation, asking for a justification or why they feel that the additional $1,000 in suggested hazard pay was supported by some sort of evidence or expenditure on their end, and he indicated that he would get back to me, and claimed that one of the issues is their folks have to travel, either by air or otherwise, and that travel has a risk and so on and so forth. I'm not sure that shows the extra expense that we were talking about. And we sort of left the conversation at a stalemate. So I emailed him, I copied staff and Mr. Tolbert on the email, and asked him to put together something to justify why that expense would exist and why we would think we should pay it. And I'm waiting for his response.
All right, thank you. I think Mr. Mellon brought up some good points on that, Mr. Reed, when we referred that to you guys for follow-up, and that was, I think specifically he asked for knowing to show like what the money was actually attributable to. So I'm assuming that was part of that discussion. You mentioned travel, but it seems like travel would be in place regardless. So, but that's just my opinion. But
I think they would have to do that either way. It just sounds like they want to be compensated for risk, and don't we all? You know,
we all do. All right. Thank you for that update. Anything else from council report, Mr. Reed or Mr. Tolbert?
Nothing, sir.
All right, hearing none. Purchase orders, none. The next meeting of this board will take place on May 19th at 10 a.m. in the Commissioner's courtroom, which will be conducted at this point via Zoom and or in person. The public test, of course, is still about, are they ready yet? Or we don't know yet?
It'll be a couple hours.
Before they're ready? Okay.
They proceeded when you gave them permission to proceed.
They did. Okay, good. Is there any public comment while we're waiting? So we do have some public comment. Leanne, do you have something in writing?
I have 2 emails, both from Elizabeth Palacio. Good morning, board members. Today, my questions and concerns are as follows. At this time last week, Indiana had 1,150 deaths reported per WVEZ 107 FM radio. Today, it is 1,540 deaths. Thus is devastating, especially hitting close to home for some of us. That 390 more deaths, as we find ourselves in this COVID-19 abyss, can we surely account that our essential employees, such as yourselves and others around you, are safe by taking the proper precautions as other counties are doing, such as Porter County, being tested and thermed as they return to work? Also, is there a commissioner's agreement with Franciscan Health, as Porter County has, on election information? Can Lake County put out a short video on our early voting ballot information? Can you tell me how many of the same questions are being asked on the phone per our ballot? This is a great short video on filling out the ballot. If you can go to Allen County, Indiana, for Misty Meehan, and facebook.com/watch. Thank you for your time, Elizabeth Palacio, East Chicago, Indiana. Second email, also from Elizabeth Palacio. Also, have you heard of Safe Voter Indiana requesting more information for voters? Many voters do not know Indiana Mail does some traveling. Comes to Indiana, goes out to Illinois to be sorted, comes back to Indiana, then delivered to the addresses. That is a long process. Can you tell me in the hours, the length of time in hours? Can our county honor Vote Safe Indiana's request for allowing ballots being counted after the date of June 2nd? Thank you for your time, Elizabeth Palacio, East Chicago, Indiana. We do have one person, Mr. President, who has raised their hand. Pixel, Ginger, if you can unmute Pixel.
Hello?
Sir or madam, you have 3 minutes. Leanne, can you take the time? 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address or city or town.
All right. My name is Ken Davidson. I live in Hammond, Indiana. And I think first I wanted to say thank you for this, but I think that given the trying circumstances, we expect some technical difficulties, but this display of incompetence is particularly egregious, and voters should be certainly concerned that these are the people running our elections. With regard to the nursing home issue and the traveling board, You know, there is a reason that an agent of a campaign is not supposed to be the president of the election board. There's a long history of suggestions going back to the Pabay versus Pastrick case, which I'm sure you're all aware of nursing homes deciding elections in this case. And when we have someone who is an agent of a campaign as the president of the election board making decisions regarding traveling board and nursing home voting, that really should give concern to all residents of Northwest Indiana. This is why we try to have some kind of separation between campaigns and the election board, but those rules are simply ignored in Lake County, Indiana. With regard to the campaign finance reports, there was never any discussion, as always. Let's back up a step. If we did things the right way in the first place, where people filed their forms electronically and they were available online, like the state does it, like the federal government does it, we wouldn't be in this situation right now. We need a system. The voters will not be able to view the campaign finance information before the election. This is crucial information for voters to have. Who's spending the money? Where did the money come from? I mean, there's a lot of talk about campaign finance and who's paying who, right? But we don't know until after the election. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Any other public comment, Leanne?
I do not believe so.
All right, we will continue with the public test. We'll be broadcast on